I'm assuming that most of you have already heard of the Indo-European linguistic family and the Proto-Indo-European Yamnaya, who spread that language into most of Europe, Anatolia, Iran, India, and Central Asia. Where did they come from? And who was there in the Eurasian steppe before them? My name's Josh. I'm a geographer, sociologist, and mythographer. My aim here is to pull together and integrate multiple disciplines in order to present a bigger picture and more intuitive picture of history. I feel like it's difficult to understand the origins of the Indo-Europeans without really visualizing it. No culture exists in a vacuum, but whenever someone says this or that word, motif, or deity is Indo-European, it sounds almost as though their language and culture just sprang up out of nowhere, without any prior influences. So, I prepared a few maps to give some context to their origins, because there was, indeed, a time before the Proto-Indo-Europeans and their language existed. Now, let's investigate. The prevailing hypothesis as to where the Proto-Indo-Europeans and their language came from is the Kurgan Hypothesis, which credits the Eurasian steppe in modern Ukraine as the homeland of the Indo-European mother tongue. The mother culture is thought to be the Yamnaya, a nomadic cattle culture with some evidence of early horseback riding to aid in cattle ranching. Perhaps they were the first cowboys, but they mostly used ox-pulled wagons to get around. These cows, oxen, and wagons they got from the Chalcolithic, that is, coppersmithing early European farmers to their southwest, the cucuteni-trypillia culture in Moldavia. Or perhaps from the Caucasian herders to their southeast, the Maykop culture of Ciscaucasia, the plains north of the Caucasus Mountains. This makes sense because according to genetic research into the Yamnaya and the steppe ancestry of Indo-Europeans, about 50% of that ancestry is from Caucasian hunter-gatherers, who were ancestral to both the Caucasian Maykop culture and the early European farmer cucuteni-trypillian culture. The other 50% of Yamnaya ancestry was Eastern hunter-gatherers, corresponding with the Proto-Finno-Ugric peoples, ancestral to modern Finns and Hungarians. The Samara culture, often considered to be Proto-Yamnaya, represent the beginning of the transition from forest-dwelling Eastern hunter-gatherers to the steppe-herding Yamnaya. Thus, I like to think of the Yamnaya as representing the horizon between hunter-gatherers in the north and farmer-herders in the south. North of the steppe horizon, Eastern hunter-gatherers retained their Proto-Finno-Ugric languages whilst adopting certain Neolithic packages, a technological cultural diffusion with a negligible demographic component. Whereas south of the steppe horizon, the Western hunter-gatherers and Caucasian hunter-gatherers were largely assimilated by migrating Anatolian Neolithic farmers along with a Neolithic package, a fully demographic or demic diffusion. The main competing hypothesis is the Anatolian Hypothesis, put forward by Colin Renfrew in 1987, who argued that Proto-Indo-European may have been spread by Anatolian Neolithic farmers into Europe, Eurasia, Iran, and India during the agricultural revolution in 7000 BC onward. The most archaic Indo-European language family was Anatolic, that of Hittite, Luwian, and Palaic. Hittite was first attested around 1800 BC in a cuneiform tablet at Hattusa, Anatolia, after the Hittites had conquered it from the Hattian civilization. Colin Renfrew suggests that, since they were the oldest, their homeland may not have been far away, in western Anatolia or even eastern Anatolia. This Anatolian hypothesis has been generally dismissed by most linguists, since the Kurgan hypothesis can be corroborated by genetic and archaeological evidence pointing to the dispersal of significant steppe ancestry into Europe, Anatolia, Iran, and India around 3000 BC, aligning more with the probable age of the Proto-Indo-European mother tongue. The migrations of the Anatolian Neolithic farmers were much farther back, and I concur with most linguists, especially since the Hittites seem quite alien to the Hattians, and the Hattians, of all peoples, were most likely the direct descendants of the indigenous Neolithic Anatolian Tash-Tepler culture in southern Anatolia and upper Mesopotamia. This is the culture associated with Göbekli Tepe. Also, when the Hittite Empire fell, its language too disappeared, suggesting that it was mostly only used by a small upper class of foreigners. However, I see great potential for the Anatolian hypothesis to become useful again, at least if it's no longer concerned with the origins of Proto-Indo-European per se, but with the Proto-Proto-Indo-European mother tongue of the Anatolian Neolithic farmers. The remnants of this older hypothetical language still exist as substrates within Indo-European languages, and perhaps other isolated Paleo-European languages like Basque, Etruscan, and Minoan. Linguistic substrates are words in a particular language that seem to be loanwords from a separate language group, since they don't follow the etymological rules or roots of their main reconstructed proto-language. Many of these substrate words in Indo-European correspond with products of the Neolithic package that Anatolian Neolithic farmers brought with them and traded with hunter-gatherers in Europe and elsewhere. Pottery, barley, wheat, plow, yoke, wine, olives, metal, bronze, copper, gold, honey, mead, goat, sheep, cow, pig, donkey, and so on. The use of feminine, masculine, and neuter grammatical genders for words may also be borrowed from the Neolithic substrate of Indo-European, since it's concentrated in the Mediterranean, Anatolia, and the Caucasus. Such an Anatolian mother tongue might have originated in the vicinity of the Tash-Tepler culture, used by the first farmers and herders in settlements like Karahan Tepe, Göbekli Tepe, Koskoyuk, Catalhoyuk, and Hakelar-Hoyuk around 10,000 BC. It is further speculated that Hattic, the substrate of Anatolic, and Hurro-Urartian, the substrate of Armenian, might be part of the Northwest Caucasian and Northeast Caucasian language families respectively. Along with Southern Caucasian languages like Georgian, these three make up a hypothetical Caucasic language superfamily. But how did the Yamnaya and their Indo-European successors come to assimilate and dominate the demographically dominant farmers south of the steppe horizon? From about 3450 to 3000 BCE, populations and settlements in Europe experienced a sharp decline, referred to as the Neolithic decline. Its most probable causes include climate change, overfarming, plague, invasion, or a combination of these. Yersinia pestis, the same pneumonic bacteria responsible for the Justinian plague and the Black Plague, was found in remains across Europe between 3000 and 2900 BC, sometimes even within mass burials. The burned house horizon also was a region encompassing the cucuteni-trypillia culture, Danube River, and Yamnaya steppe, where entire settlements were regularly burned from 6500 to 2000 BC. The cucuteni-trypillia culture's settlements were densely packed, some with populations estimated between 10 and 20,000, comparable to Sumerian cities at the time. Domesticated animals also lived within these cities, further suggesting that regular plagues might have occurred. Regularly burning down the entire settlement might have been the most reliable way to cleanse them of bacteria. But, of course, these densely packed cities provided the perfect petri dishes for said bacteria to evolve, becoming more and more deadly, until by 3000 BC, a super deadly strain may have wreaked havoc on the entire continent. Since the Yamnaya were also part of the burned house horizon, yet were in the periphery of the densely packed cities in Moldavia, they may have developed something of an immunity. Thus, when more densely populated settlements across Europe were being decimated by plague, the Yamnaya would have had a great opportunity to flood into the vacuum left behind. Some of the first Indo-European people recorded in Europe and Anatolia were the Mycenaeans and Hittites around 2000 BCE, notoriously warlike peoples who seem to have mostly occupied the upper and warrior classes of each society. Their respective proto-languages, Proto-Hellenic and Proto-Anatolic, are projected to have originated around 3000 BC, corresponding well with the Neolithic decline and the migration of steppe ancestry into Europe. Further genetic evidence shows that steppe ancestry in Europe and Anatolia was mostly brought by Y haplogroups, men, whereas a significant portion of Neolithic Anatolian ancestry has been retained by women. This further supports the possibility of a violent invasion of Yamnaya warrior men. There is a well-documented Indo-European tradition, for instance, where all but the firstborn sons of a tribe would be ritually banished into the wilderness in order to harden themselves. These feral youths were called wolves, and although they were intended to return to the village when they had proven themselves, they would often form war bands with each other and found their own tribes by cattle raiding, abducting women, and perhaps conquering foreign settlements. Some of the greatest evidence for violence in the Indo-European migrations can be found in Poland and Germany, where there are various mass graves with signs of trauma. These correspond with the corded ware culture's replacement of the globular amphora culture and funnel beaker cultures in Northern Europe. This violent wave evolved directly into the battle axe culture, which may have further evolved into the Germanic cultures. Consider the eerily similar clash of the warlike Aesir gods and the agrarian Vanir gods in Norse myth. Despite all of this, genetic studies on Indo-European speakers today show varying degrees of a Neolithic Anatolian genetic substrate. Its signature is strongest in Sardinia, Spain, Tuscany, Greece, and Albania, with substantial non-Indo-European enclaves, now or in the past few thousand years, like Nuragic, Basque, Etruscan, and Minoan. Albania has no non-Indo-European remnants recently, but it and Illyria was one of the first regions heavily settled by early European farmers, and also one of the first resettled by Yamnaya-influenced Vukedol culture in 3000 BC. Those warriors may have been some of the first to take local wives, integrate, and position themselves to defend against late-coming competitors. This is my second video on ethnogenesis, weaving together multiple disciplines and running theories into a bigger picture. Needless to say, it takes a lot of time to research, document, map, and edit these videos and their topics together. If you learned something, consider watching my video on the origins of the Etruscans, or any other videos I have here on mythology with a comparative historical lens. I'll be preparing the maps for each of these videos to be sold as downloadables, but until I finish those maps, I have several mythological family trees on offer, from mainstream pantheons like Greek and Norse to more obscure ones like Etruscan, Hittite, and a lot more. And we're constantly adding to that on my online Etsy shop, Studio Pandemonia. And they'll also be available on my Gumroad, which is basically my version of Patreon. I think it's a much better platform that provides a lot more varieties of things to prospective patrons. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and comment with what cultures, maps, or mythologies you'd like me to explore next. See you in the next one.